Okay, just wait till we go live on Instagram. Okay. Welcome to Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I'm your guide and host through the show. Today is our monthly series called Unpopular Real Estate Opinions with Chris Linsell. Now, Chris Linsell is a real estate technology analyst. He's also the director of content at large for Chris.
Luxury Presence, baby.
For Luxury Presence, a great company. I apologize. I had a total brain freeze. I just got back, everyone, from Seattle, and our flight was delayed 2.5 hours. I got in at 1:30 in the morning, not this morning. It was yesterday, so I don't have a great excuse here, but I am still a little bit out of it. I apologize. But Chris specializes in new solutions to old questions and constantly exploring the cutting edge of technology in the real estate space. Chris also has many years of experience as a licensed realtor in the state of Michigan. He's worked there as a marketer, a digital strategist, a trainer, and he's worked for national brands like Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of Michigan and Coldwell Banker Schmidt Realtors. Now, throughout his career, Chris has been part of hundreds of transactions ranging from modest rural starter homes to multi-million-dollar waterside compounds. He's seen it all. He is also an accomplished musician, actor, and speaker. Catch him at your next industry event. He's probably going to be there. And he is engaged with audiences ranging in size from 30 to 3,000. Follow Chris on LinkedIn. He just had a post that went pretty viral yesterday. Check him out. He was talking about what we're going to discuss today, which is the Compass v. Zillow complaint that was filed. And we'll talk about sort of what that is and how that, what they're looking for and who are the players and what's at stake. But again, also visit him on his website. You can hire him to speak. He is considered an industry expert. He will talk about what he sees for the future for real estate agents, as well as the industry itself. ChrisLinsell.com is where you go to learn about all things Chris. Follow him on LinkedIn, as I said. Chris, welcome back.
DJ, great to be here.
So
I know it can be challenging getting off those late flights, but we're hard launching in, baby. Let's get into it. A lot to talk about today.
I almost visited the Zillow headquarters because I have friends over there. And by the way, I'm not going to let my relationships with Zillow people. I've not spoken to anybody at Zillow about this since the lawsuit, but I am very interested in hearing your perspective. We'll try to get a more objective opinion from my side. You'll have your own opinions as well. And it's very interesting. So this just happened yesterday, and it's important because it really speaks to a larger concern, which is about fractionization. I think what we're talking about, if you haven't heard, is that Compass filed a complaint against Zillow due to the way that they are handling the Compass private listings. So can you share, Chris, just a little bit about exactly what the issue is?
Yeah. So at its core, what we're talking about is an extension of a conversation that you and I have had and that a lot of folks are having in the industry around a singular topic, which is clear cooperation. If you're not in the loop on this, the clear cooperation policy from the National Association of Realtors stipulates that anyone who is participating in the MLS, anybody who is a realtor and is listing property for sale, you must list this property for sale using the MLS within 24 hours or 1 business days. It's not actually 24 hours. It's technically 1 business day. You must list that property for sale on the MLS within 1 business day of publicly marketing the property. So this means that if you are doing anything beyond sending individual 1v1 messages to people, then you have to list that property for sale on the MLS. This counts. This means social media posts, even putting a sign in the front yard or hanging it in the window. If you are putting, using local digital display ads or physical display ads, you got to list this property on the MLS. And this is what clear cooperation stipulates. There's been a significant amount of conversation around whether or not this policy is appropriate. Arguers for clear cooperation say that without a policy like this, the result will be a fractured market where consumers do not have full access to all of the inventory, and thus preventing some buyers from having access to potential purchases, and potential sellers not having access to the full exposure of the market, thus creating an artificial price for their property, likely not high enough, because the laws of supply and demand would suggest that the more exposure a piece of inventory has to the market, the likely higher the price will go, because you'll have more potential buyers involved. So that's what proponents of clear cooperation say. Detractors of clear cooperation say sellers should ultimately be in control of how their property is marketed. If you want to list your property for sale, you should be under no obligation to list it on the MLS. And in large part because the MLS has created all sorts of agreements with third-party providers that offer those third-party providers access to all the data that is created using an MLS. For example, Zillow. The way that Zillow populates its listings on its website is through IDX agreements with MLSs. So they download all of the data in real time, practically, from local MLSs. That's how the information on Zillow is populated there. Nobody's manually going to Zillow. I should say 99.9% of people are not manually going to Zillow and entering information about listings. It is all shared via these third-party IDX agreements with local MLSs. And detractors of the clear cooperation policy would suggest, if I own a property, I am the person who ultimately gets to decide the narrative for selling that property. There are a number of legitimate reasons that you and I have talked about in past episodes. You can go back and listen to those episodes if you want to hear my diatribe on why clear cooperation isn't necessarily the best answer for the market scenario we find ourselves in. But there's a number of legitimate reasons why you might not want to list on the MLS. And so detractors of clear cooperation say this is about consumer control, private property rights, and ultimately the ability for the owner of a property to decide what they want to do with that property. So this fight, now that we've set the stage, let's fast forward to what happened over the last 48 hours. There has been a lawsuit that has been filed that is really bringing this motion to a head. And the two players in the lawsuit are Compass, which is a strong detractor of clear cooperation. Compass believes that private listings should not only be a reality, they should be an extraordinary opportunity, not just for consumers, but for brokerages to keep listings on exclusive or private networks and not include them in the MLS. Zillow believes the opposite of this. Zillow believes that all listings should have to go to the MLS, and for good reason, because their business model is built on these third-party agreements feeding them information. And so if properties are being listed for sale privately, like say on Compass's private listing network, they're not being fed to the MLS, and thus Zillow doesn't get immediate automatic access to that information. It's not saying, Compass is not saying that they don't want their presence on Zillow. They just want to be able to control very tightly how that data gets shared. Well, Zillow, as soon as Compass started making overtures in this direction, Zillow came out very strong and said any listing that is not listed on the MLS within the 24-hour, within the one business day rule. I want to be careful when I say this because the 24-hour, that can be deceptive, because you don't have to, like, it doesn't count over the weekend, for instance. It's just a single business day. It doesn't count over the holiday. It's a single business day. But anyway, Zillow came out very strong and said, if you exceed that one business day MLS listing rule, your listing is banned from Zillow. It won't be advertised there. And Zillow took very aggressive steps. You can find these recordings online. Zillow employees calling realtors and property owners whose property was listed for sale but was not listed on the MLS, telling them specifically, your listing is about to get banned from Zillow. We haven't taken action yet, but this is the policy here. And so Compass filed suit against Zillow, claiming that this was an unfair monopolistic business practice. And that's where we find ourselves today.
It's a very difficult sort of entanglement because Zillow, despite not being a government entity, a privately owned company, is in some ways it is in most obvious way the preeminent place that people search for homes in America. So we have, I don't know what their stats are at now, 250 million unique users a month, maybe more. They certainly touch, I think their stats told me something like 93% of all residential real estate transactions touch Zillow at some point. So there's a challenge here that the vast majority of users, people who buy and sell homes, are going to use this product, which is free. And so, but it is a privately held company. So Zillow gets to define the rules of engagement.
Yep, 100%. It is, I think, a misconception on the part of many consumers that Zillow is, at its core, a private company. It is an internet business, because the service that Zillow provides, in the eyes of many consumers, is akin to a service provided by a public utility.
Yeah.
It is very similar in terms of the expectation of dependability and consistency that you have with the electric company. And so, I mean, as an agent, I can tell you, in the few times when Zillow, for instance, when a new listing wasn't being updated at a good, like a speedy time with Zillow, you get calls from your clients. Hey, I thought we were live. I can't find my listing on Zillow, assuming that Zillow was some sort of, government like provided resource. This is just a private business. And ultimately, this is one of the things that I am, one of the positions that I took in my LinkedIn post that has generated a lot of conversation, is that at its core, what we're witnessing right now in the soon to be court battle between Compass and Zillow is not a battle of good versus evil.
Right.
It's not a battle of right versus wrong. We certainly, I think it's very fair to say that most industry professionals come down on one side or the other. So it's easy to characterize one side of this argument as right and one side as wrong. But what we're ultimately witnessing here is more of the strategy versus strategy, and the determination as to whether or not either of these strategies breaks the law. I mean, to boil it way down, Compass says that it's defending consumer choice. Zillow says that it's protecting transparency.
Yeah.
That's what their arguments are on the front page of Inman and The Real Deal. But those are, I would say, idealized versions of their strategy. Compass says they're defending consumer choice. Well, you can also interpret this to say Compass wants to wall off inventory to drive agent loyalty and buyer dependence. That's a strategy.
Yep.
It's the PR speak. Compass says it's defending consumer choice is the PR speak for Compass wants to wall off inventory and drive agent loyalty and buyer dependence. Zillow says it's protecting transparency. That's PR speak for Zillow wants to ensure listings flow through their platform so that they can sell more leads and scale monetization. This is strategy versus strategy. This isn't good versus evil. This isn't even, white knight versus black knight, medieval times. This is, we've got two competing business models, both of which have been very successful, and there's a lot of dollars on the line. And so now we are coming to blows, legally speaking, over this.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is really, these are two competitors. And in the past, we might not have looked at Zillow as a competitor of another brokerage. I know many brokers have looked at Zillow that way, but they really are two companies that are competing for really the same end result, right? So you have Zillow, who's built the entry point as a free, easy, open entry point, and then they monetize it on the back end. So user goes to Zillow, that becomes a lead. Zillow sells that lead to agent A. Right. And then and then on the Compass side, Compass says, we're becoming this really powerful, massive nationwide company. And we have thousands and thousands of agents. We have a lot of great agents. And what if we had our own version of a mini Zillow in-house that we could, all play in this smaller, playpen of sorts. And we would love to have that because that creates value for our consumers, for our agents. And you have these two, but the challenge, of course, is that everyone does at some point flow through Zillow. So Compass says, hey, we want our stuff on there too.
Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, where does this leave us? Where does this leave us as an industry? Where does this leave us as operators within an industry whose primary responsibility is to our clients? This is a question ultimately that I think a lot of agents are asking themselves, especially at inflection points like right now. But I want, before we talk a little bit about what agents could do, I do want to provide one other little piece of background, which I think is valid here. This isn't the first time we have seen this sort of argument. It's probably the first time it has come to such a head, but since the brokerage model was created, brokerages have always wanted a level of exclusivity to protect margins.
Sure.
I mean, this is just the reality of doing business, especially in an age of real estate when margins are shrinking, right? Like, brokerages are going to look for every opportunity that they can to create a level of exclusive value, such that they can add dollars to their bottom line. This isn't evil. This is capitalism, right?
Absolutely.
Platforms like Zillow, but platforms at large, have always wanted a level of universality. They need that level of freely open information so that they can justify charging the people that they do charge for premium services. If you think that this is new, I'd like to point out a small internet startup that was called The Facebook at one point, that started offering their services to people for free because they wanted a universal inflow of information such that they could turn around and monetize parts of their business premium services to particular advertisers or to people interested in that audience. This is not new. Zillow did not invent this. They are running this playbook in our industry in a way that other people are not doing at this level. But this is not a new playbook either. Like, this is history repeating itself.
Yeah, the Facebook analogy is a good one. I was thinking about that earlier, and it really is very similar. It's a very similar strategy, and there's a monetization aspect of it. And as you said, this is just company versus company, strategy versus strategy. I don't see a good or bad here. I just see one company upset that another company doesn't like. It has different rules for that.
Yeah,
And
100%.
I don't know how much merit there is in this lawsuit. I don't know. I'm not a legal analyst. I would be curious to know, is there a real case here? Because of course that's up to the lawyers in the courts, but I don't know. It seems like there's a private company and another private company, and they're doing business in different ways. I don't know if laws have been broken. I certainly don't know what laws there are to protect. But if we talk about this in the interest of public good, then I think we maybe shift the conversation to what should be, what should be out there. And maybe that's a bit of fantasy sort of conversation. But if we do think about what would be in the best public interest, how would you start to sort of craft, a some sort of product or service that could sort of replace, or not replace, but supplement what these private companies are doing?
Well, I'll say one thing. The toothpaste is out of the tube here. So there is, I think, to some degree, the ideas that I'm about to share with you may, frankly, not be realistic any longer, because we have the train has left this station. We can't go back to before these business models existed without significant unwind and, I mean, frankly, financial destruction of large parts of the industry. So take this with a grain of salt. The easiest thing to do here is the National Association of Realtors turns around and says, guys, you have IDX agreements with every single every MLS has IDX agreements with third-party vendors. We happen to own the majority of, or at least stakes in, just about every MLS in the country. We are not going to be renewing any of these IDX agreements. Starting today, the contracts that are in place for IDX on MLSs will expire, and they will not be removed. They will not be renewed. At the same time, we are reclaiming operating control of the domain Realtor.com, and we are transforming Realtor.com into a national MLS, such that there is no longer an IDX element to business. Realtor.com is the place where MLSs all feed to and operate.
And we'll jump in real quick for those that don't understand what IDX is. That is the data feed from the MLS to the third party. So this allows for, personal websites to showcase MLS listings, Zillow to showcase MLS listings. This is the feed itself is called IDX.
Yeah, that's right. Internet Data Exchange. So the National Association of Realtors could just turn around and say, listen, it won't happen overnight because there are contractual agreements in place, but we are sunsetting IDX. We are going to create a national multiple listing service. This is where the source of truth for all properties listed for sale using the MLS exists. You are either here or you are not. That's it. There would mean significant disruption on the way that third-party businesses like Zillow operate. there would still be an opportunity for third-party feeds into places like Zillow or into your website, like at Luxury Presence. Property search is a foundation of a successful real estate agent team brokerage website. Of course, we want to maintain the ability for operators within the industry to integrate search as a part of their brand and service opportunity. However, the way that it is done right now is in competition with MLSs rather than in conjunction with MLSs. The NAR could turn around and nip this in the bud right now by creating a national multiple listing service. You are either here or you are not. The other thing that would need to happen in conjunction with this is the National Association of Realtors would essentially need to remove clear cooperation as a requirement for participation on the MLS and open the door to private listing services becoming an option for people who are selling their home. But I would provide it with a caveat. I would say that ultimately the decision to list privately, the decision for a consumer to say, I don't want to be part of the MLS, would be a temporal one, which means instead of having a clear cooperation policy, we put a cap of this property has like a 60-day max private listing window. After 60 days, it goes to the MLS. And if a private sale occurs, that all sale data is reported to that national MLS. Now, there are a ton of regulatory issues with this. Not in the very least being that different states have different reporting requirements, privacy requirements. The laws in Illinois and Michigan and New York and Florida are different. And so, yeah, we would have some significant regulatory red tape to sort through. But by standardizing this and removing the debate as to whether or not this is a public versus private conversation, which it's really not. It is a controlling the front door, the digital front door of real estate conversation. If we remove all of that and just make a single front door, we stop all of this argument. The other element that is important here, but very unpopular, so come at me if you don't like what I'm about to say. I think that the National Association of Realtors should accept the same level of regulation that public utilities accept when it comes to the provision of this information. Your electricity is not delivered by the government. It's delivered by private companies that are super regulated by the government. The National Association of Realtors delivery of real estate market data should be subject to the same scrutiny as utility companies, because ultimately this has become a utility.
Wow, you said a lot, and yes, I agree. So the idea that we need a public repository of information that is free, accessible, and complete is, I think, the main point here.
I agree completely. Ultimately, the real challenge with the Zillow versus Compass debate, to me, is not that it's not that having to decide whether one business model is better than the other. We're going to find, like, capitalism is going to tell us that.
Sure.
Eventually, we would get to that place. Capitalism would work that out. The real challenge is that we are in a situation right now where allowing the naked market forces to sort out which business model is better than the other would be at the detriment to consumers, because ultimately there would be such a level of incongruency in terms of operations, availability of information, even the operations of agents from office to office would be so different. It is really impossible, frankly, to understand how you could let the market forces sort this out without consumers being the ultimate loser.
I see a huge opportunity here, and maybe it's a pie in the sky idea, but for the National Association of Realtors to really think about our inaction, our sort of hands-off approach to dealing directly with the consumer, the buyers and sellers themselves. We've got two different hands that reach out to buyers and sellers, which is we have the digital hands, which are the Zillows of the world, and then we have the agents of the world, and they're basically doing providing all this information. What if we, as an organization, provided the information? We provide the information, and then the business models kind of go their business model way
Mm.
and battle it out, duke it out. It seems that there is an opportunity here to be these. It's funny. I was wanting to look up a military record for somebody, and I'd never done that before, and I didn't really know where to do that. But there is a central repository of military records, and so I was able to find that. I would love for there to be some version of that, for homeowners, for that is a public, some sort of public work, public good, some sort of NAR sponsored thing. This would be an opportunity for them to really establish themselves, I think, as really the thought leader, and also create a direct connection to the people they have really ignored this entire time, which is the homeowner.
Mm. Uh, is the big challenge. I was just taking a note as you were saying that about, and ultimately I wrote a couple of things, but I deleted it all, and it just ended up writing a single word, which is how.
Yeah.
Despite how valuable that sounds, you're talking about a systemic, foundational level service that would require us to essentially go back to square one in the way that we think about the real estate industry at large. It's not impossible, but huge there are huge businesses built on the existing system, and the existing system isn't serving consumers the way that it was prior to these businesses emerging. And so despite how valuable that would be, the challenge ultimately becomes what is actually feasible given the real-time market limitations. And to me, honestly, the thing that I feel the most comfort in, that I come back to on this conversation, is that the best way through this is the same answer to just about every question that it gets posed in this space, which is the local expert agents.
Yeah.
The local experts who are I just did an interview, or just published some interview copy, or some interview videos with a realtor from New York. Her name's Trisha Lee. She's a member of Ryan Serhant's team. She's on the Netflix show Owning Manhattan, and she told me about her perspective on how realtors are the original influencers. They are the people before social media it took rise, and the job title of influencer was created. Real estate agents were the ultimate influencers, because nobody knew their community, their market, their homes, the businesses, the dynamics of their area, and of the local real estate climate. Nobody knew that stuff better than real estate professionals. And those folks had a unique set of influence over the clients that they served. And so, to some degree, I am comforted by the fact that even though these large systemic changes are unlikely to occur in any kind of realistic fashion, despite the fact that we're going to go through some big systemic conversations with lawsuits like Compass v. Zillow, the ultimate answer here happens on a block by block, dirt road by dirt road basis, with the local experts advising clients 1v1, understanding exactly what's best for individual clients, and developing themselves as a go-to resource for their community that they serve, not the internet at large. Because at the end of the day, If you have a reputation in your market for being the most knowledgeable professional for whatever community it is you are serving, your clients may start their home search process or their home sale process on places like Zillow, but they're going to finish it with you. And that right there, to me, is the ultimate comfort for the confusion and uncertainty that the situation can create.
Correct. But what if that local expert doesn't have access to all of the properties in that market?
It's an interesting question, but I would pose to you the following response in the form of a question. If you are the ultimate expert in a market and you do not have access or knowledge on part of the inventory, are you the expert?
Yeah, it's a good point.
And I'll make another Trisha Lee reference. By the way, if you want to watch the full interviews, you can go to the Luxury Presence YouTube channel. Trisha Lee, the most recent guest on Luxury Presence's The A-List. It's fascinating content. Little plug there. But listen, if I'm going to harken back to another Trisha Lee point that she made in the interview, which is if your goal is to be the real estate expert of New York City, you are going to fail. That is like trying to be the expert on all things wheat. You cannot. This is way too broad of a category. You cannot serve all things New York City because New York City is made up of hundreds of different communities. Chicago is made up of 77 unique identified neighborhoods.
Yep.
If you think that you are going to create your business by saying, I am the expert in 77 places, unless you've been around for 50 years, there is just no way that is going to be possible. And even then, I don't think it's possible. If you don't, I think your point is well taken, that having a bifurcated or, a divided inventory market where there are certain places where some inventory is listed and certain places where other inventory is listed, I can understand the point about the challenges that creates for consumers.
Mm-hmm.
We are also at the front edge of disruption.
Yeah.
So things are the worst that they're going to be right now. And two, if you are the local expert in that particular community and there are homes or inventory that you don't know about, I would venture to say you are not the local expert. You are an enthusiast with the opportunity to become an expert, but you need to get more educated. You need to get access to more resources if you want to claim that expertise.
That's a really strong point. What you've essentially just done is take this macro issue and really brought it all the way down to this narrow alleyway. Because at the end of the day, what can an individual agent do? Learn all of the inventory in their market, because the big boys are going to be battling the ability to see these listings. The battle for where these listings are going to be viewable is going to be left up to the courts and the National Association of Realtors, and we'll see, and the MLSs as well. What will happen to these databases? But your point is really well taken, which is, as an individual agent, I can only control my understanding of my market, and I can go out and seek this information. I can provide that directly to the consumer, and then I become, the reason that commission gets paid.
100%. Ultimately, this becomes not a crisis of business model, but an opportunity of service. And don't get me wrong, we are not going to come out of this food fight with a clean shirt, but everybody that wants to is going to come out on the other side. I'm 100% confident of that.
Yeah, it's important too. Like, if visibility is going to change, right? These are private companies. They get to make decisions that suit their private interests. So,
Mhm.
unless unless there's monopoly conversations, and maybe the government needs to step in at some point if a company gets too large. However, these are just companies doing what companies do, which is
Yep.
maximizing profitability.
Yep.
It at not at the expense of the consumer, but certainly at the at the direction of where they want profits to go. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, this is something that the individual agent can say, well, this is businesses battling businesses. What I need to do is justify my existence. My
Mhm.
existence is, yes, maybe the IDX feeds will turn off tomorrow and Zillow loses a lot of their data. Maybe that happens. Well, what happens to me? Now that's probably not going to happen, but what does happen to me? Well, I still have to be the local expert in my area. And what if Compass walls off all of their listings and they say, we're just going to do it all in-house and we're not posting these to the MLS. We're going to just create our own little micro MLS, which is a possibility. They certainly are growing to a size where that could be something that they would want to consider, or at least for a period of time. It's going to sit here and then it's going to go public. Yeah, you're going to want to make friends with those people because you're going to want to know where those listings are if you're not a Compass agent. So that, I think, is the point that you made is so well taken, which is you're still doing your job. You're still finding all the inventory that exists, and you're still trying to provide that inventory, and you're just going to collect it maybe from different places going forward. There's going to
Mhm.
be a number of different streams, and there's not going to be one repository unless National Association of Realtors steps up, develops this product, provides it to everyone as kind of a checkpoint that, or some, like you can look up lawyers credentials, you can
Mhm.
somehow some version of that maybe. um, will that be even, is it possible? Will it be adopted? Will people, I don't know, but it's interesting that we expect these private companies to sort of work in the public's best interest, which is not what companies do. That's not, that the nature of a company is not to work in the public's best interest. It's to work in the private company's best interest.
It's the truth. It's the truth. And ultimately that is that is the only thing that we can depend on as a foundational truth in this argument, because there will be a lot of back and forth from these companies over what is best for the consumer. But I stand by my earlier statements that those are, while there is likely to be some validity to those conversations, that is the PR camouflage around what is best for our business model first.
Agreed. Well, Chris, thank you for this conversation. I think a great place to wrap up on everyone to check out Chris's LinkedIn post that went viral. We'll post a link to that here in the description, as well as a link to Chris's website and his social media. But chrislinsell.com is where you can go to learn about all things Chris. Chris regularly speaks at industry events, including the National Association of Realtors. He has spoken at Inman, and just about every major, noteworthy sort of congregation of agents. Chris is usually at the forefront talking about issues like this. So follow him on LinkedIn, check him out on Twitter as well, and also check out Luxury Presence to see what he is doing over there with
Mhm.
all of these data feeds. What are they doing? So,
Yeah.
Chris, thank you for your insight and your perspective. Once again, it is well needed. And boy, it's fun just to kind of watch to see. I'm grabbing my popcorn because I
Mm.
enjoy. Part of me, there's maybe it's a little bit of bloodlust, but I enjoy watching these companies battle it out. Uh,
Mhm.
and there's no obvious hero here. I don't see a villain. I just see two companies going, but I want this, but I want this.
Mhm.
And we'll see what happens. And at the end of the day, the consumer uh, needs to just be able to find a local qualified expert who knows everything that's going on in that market, and
Yeah.
that could be you. So continue to focus on your business, everyone who is listening, and Yeah, we'll see you next time. As always, please share this episode with a friend. Leave us a review. Follow us on social. And yeah, Chris, thanks so much. We'll see you.
DJ, see you next time.